Your brain has been working against you basically is due to these key points I'm going to explain now. We all know the brain is divided into two parts, which is the left and the right hemisphere. Right. Now, in the whole picture of the brain, it's divided into four parts, which is the cerebrum, the brainstem, and the diencephalon, making four portions. Now, we only use a huge percent, say 10% of the human brain, which is mostly associated with the frontal part of the brain, which handles things like vision, reasoning, and all that. So a lot is just due to the functioning of the prefrontal cortex and the frontal part of the brain. Now, if the whole of human being, the entirety of the human race, is using just 10 or below 10% of the human brain, so what occupies the rest of the 90%? Which we underlive. We call ourselves humans, but we are actually underliving the full capacity of being a human. Now, in the deep part of the brain, which is the diencephalon, lies a very key organ, which we call the pineal gland. It's very deeply seated in there. And most of the time it's often ignored, like not really. The pineal gland, which is often dubbed the spirituality gland. So this is where those extra parts, which we don't get to develop as human beings, are just buried deep in there, rotting away without ever reaching their full potential. Okay, so let's break it down this way. The first 7 years of a child's life is mostly spent in the theta wave, brainwave, which means it's just assimilating, absorbing things. And it's not only absorbing things, is getting information from the generations before, because it's getting from the community, it's getting from his parents, who got their knowledge or perception about life from their own parents, and the trail goes downward in that order. So we eventually don't get to live life from our own creative doing. We just live in other people's lives and think it's ours. It goes as far as saying, even your thoughts, if I dare you to create a thought right now, you can't create a thought. It's almost impossible to create a thought. But we do have thoughts every now and then. And we hold these thoughts and hang on to them and think they are our thoughts and they're ours. But this is just, your brain is like this huge quantum device that can interpret spiritual frequency. I don't want to use the word spiritual frequency, I'd rather say frequencies around just energy. Right, but to give a proper dimension to what I mean, which means the brain can intercept. So it's like a Wi-Fi, a router that just keeps scanning and, oh, this is close, and it picks it, whether it's relevant to you or not. Now, the difference between a normal human being and an awakened being is that now he has a broader perception of who he is or who she is, as the case may be, and can sort of filter, okay, no, this doesn't belong here, this belongs here. But the average human being is just bombarded. A huge percentage of humans are not even in charge of their thoughts, which means they are not in charge of their personalities. That this psychological form of, oh, me, my life, my story, and this is who I am. No, that's not who you are. You don't even know yourself. Right? So just imagine the endless build-ups that must have accumulated from us living in this way. We're just using 10%. Just 10% of our mind capability. We have 90. Fallow. You know, there's this in the exohelix structure of the human DNA. There is a huge percentage of genomes of structures that are deemed, the scientists call them the junk DNA. Like they're junk, like they're just crap stuffs the body or you don't need. But those are actually potentials that are being, just because they can't find the medium to define it, to call it, okay, this is what it does. Because the way the dimension of life works is that life has to sit on a certain container. It's not just existing by itself. Even if you can see, when you go to hyperspace and you go out of space and you leave Earth and you go to space, you can see just the planets seem to be floating by themselves, suspended in the air. And just, if you can zoom out far enough, because each planet is obviously huge, humongous, it's not something you could just like, if we could zoom in enough to our now specialized telescopes to zoom enough, we can see they're just floating in their own. They're not suspended by anything, because the absence of the evidence is not the evidence of absence. Because you can't see does not mean there are several other things supporting to put that in place. So a yogi and all that, those are people that have become their energy field itself. They are no longer, you become a human being, you become a self when you ascribe to the story. It's to your personal life stories. Okay, it's like, let's make an analogy. Say you are water itself, right? And when water is being poured in a cup or some entrapment and put in a cold, say a freezer or something, it solidifies and takes the shape of the container it's being poured in. Now, if we were to interview the ice and said, "Who are you?" The ice would definitely tell you, "I'm just the ice. I'm an ice block. That's it. I'm just ice, a block of ice. That's what I am, right?" But you know it's not really a block of ice. It's just the condition it's in that moment. And when you melt it back and thaw it, then it melts and turns back to its natural state, water. So a lot of us are identified with that block, thinking we're a block. And what is the block in this case? Our life stories, our personal stories that we're so attached to. Oh, you just don't understand. My life is so this, my life is so that. All that are just the so what of the condition of the ice. It's not really you though. Right, so we have to find a way to start melting ourselves back from that ice form to the watery form, which is our true state.